Joining us now is Speaker Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, welcome to the program. So much to discuss, but first, I want to make sure that we discuss your new film coming out, which will premiere on PBS on January 14th at 10 p.m. Eastern. I want to play the trailer and then get some of your remarks on it. Play cut 191, please.
Right.
Immigrants have come to America from around the world for many reasons.
Some fled famine and poverty, others sought religious freedom, and some came for the possibility of a better life.
My name is Henry Kissinger, and I came to America in 1938.
The promise of freedom and opportunity continues to be a powerful draw for those who make their journey to America.
Mr. Speaker, tell us about this project.
Well, I think it was inspired by Callista because her grandmother came to the United States legally from Poland through Ellis Island, as did something like 12 million other people. And so we believe deeply in legal immigration, and we are strongly opposed to illegal immigration. And we wanted to make the case that people who have come here legally, some famous like Henry Kissinger, others like Maria Daum, who had been adopted from a Siberian orphanage and went on to become the first woman certified by the Marine Corps as a combat infantryman. All of them in their own unique way has made America a better, wealthier, more secure country. And it's important that we find ways to strengthen legal immigration at the very same time that we control the border and we deport people who are here illegally. So that's why we did it. We're very proud that PBS picked it up and that people can find it streaming at pbs.org. And I think they'll find that it's a very educational and at the same time a very interesting show.
I love the premise and what a applicable segue to what we are now seeing and living through. I want to get into the deportations and of President Trump, what he's doing immigration-wise. But, Mr. Speaker, I have to get your historical analysis first. Let's just take an even greater step back and look more macro. On Monday, President Donald Trump took the oath of office in the Capitol Rotunda in the most triumphant political comeback in American history. Put this into words in a historical context of what we, the American people, are living through and what President Donald Trump accomplished this week.
You know, when Close and I were in the Rotunda listening to the speech, it hit me that it's the most revolutionary inaugural address in American history. The next morning I went and read Jefferson's first and second inaugurals, Andrew Jackson's first inaugural, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt's first inaugural. And sure enough, Donald Trump on Monday gave the most revolutionary speech. If you read it and think about it, it's about cultural change, it's about political change, it's about economic change, it's about governmental change, and it's about changes in our role in the world. All those in 30 minutes, clear, decisive. And then what's amazing is instantaneously, he began implementing it with hundreds of executive orders. He has in the last 5 days, I think, done almost as much as Franklin Roosevelt did in 100 days. And I thought, in fact, I told him that if he keeps this up for 10 days, he will have passed Franklin Roosevelt's 100 days. And he shows no sign of slowing down. And if you saw him speaking to Davos by television, he laid it out for the business leaders of the world. You want to create jobs in America, you're going to have low taxes. You want to create jobs overseas and try to sell in America, you're going to have a tariff. I think that was probably a huge, sobering shock to many of those business leaders. And you've already seen several groups come together to commit $500 billion for artificial intelligence. The head of Saudi Arabia has pledged $600 billion in investments in the United States. And I think Trump has decided he's going to be probably the most consequential president other than Washington and Lincoln that we've had in American history. And he's certainly working at it pretty hard the first week.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with all of that. I want to get your take on the lack of something. I expected more resistance. President Donald Trump signed an executive order challenging birthright citizenship. If he would have done that back in 2017, he would have been met with 500,000 protesters in Washington the next day. President Donald Trump freed the January 6 prisoners, all of them. And all we got were a bunch of whiners on cable TV. Where is the rank and file? Where is the infantry resistance of the American left? Are they in hibernation, or have they been eliminated?
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, his 9-year project to get back here is unlike anything in American history. They did everything they could to stop him, and he's here. And maybe the most iconic moment was when he was shot and stood up with his fist up in the air, yelling, "Fight, fight, fight." I think it took something out of his opponents to realize that you're dealing here not with a normal politician, you're dealing with a citizen who has become a juggernaut of history. Second, the fact that he won by more than 2 million votes and that he carried every single swing state, all 7 of them, I think demoralized the left. Here they had thrown everything they could at him. And here he is standing triumphant. And then they're watching, to go back to General Thompson's phrase, they're watching shock and awe. I mean, he's hitting them from so many different angles every day. They're getting 20 or 30 things to be outraged about daily. And I think they're just mystified. And I think the elite media knows that they're in deep trouble. They're declining economically. They're getting people laid off. Frankly, programs like yours or like Joe Rogan or like Fox News, all of these have become dramatically more important than the traditional elite media. And the result is that their revenue is going down, their employment is going down. You look at the layoffs at places like the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times. This is a different world. And I think, now, let me be very clear, and you sort of said this at the beginning. All we got so far is a ticket to the dance. We haven't realigned America. We haven't won massive majorities like Franklin Roosevelt. And so we've got to perform. We've got to do well enough to keep the House in 26. We've got to do well enough to elect another Republican president in 28. And until we've done that, I think we're still in a gray zone where Trump's personality is carrying us, but we haven't yet quite solidified the country as a new MAGA-oriented traditional American country, which is where Trump is taking us.
I think that is extremely wise. And President Trump does have a Washington-like quality where Washington was larger than life. He would march straight into battle, as you well know, be shot at, and even shot. And there was almost an aura around him that made him largely culturally and politically invincible. You said something, though, that historians would scoff at in prior years, and now they're maybe reconsidering. You said he is attempting or on pace to be in the same sentence as Washington and Lincoln. Please make that case.
Well, I think Washington and Lincoln will always be preeminent. Washington essentially created the country. Lincoln held the country together through a 4-year Civil War. So they're in a little different class. But if you go one layer below to Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, I have no doubt that Trump is going to end up, if he continues at this pace for 4 years and keeps the House and elects a successor, I have no doubt he will end up in a zone just below Washington and Lincoln and above people we've historically thought of as great presidents. And I think that if you watch his authenticity, I watched him the other night on Hannity, and they've known each other for 30 years. He's so calm. He's so relaxed. He's so much comfortable with himself that I think this is a very important moment. You know, Clist and I made 2 movies, one about John Paul II called 9 Days That Changed the World, where he went back to Poland, and the other a movie about Reagan called Rendezvous with Destiny. And Reagan and John Paul II meet for the first time, and they've both been shot. And part of their conversation is, why did God spare us? And they concluded that God had spared them from the assassins so they could defeat the Soviet Empire. And they agreed on an alliance which worked to defeat the Soviet Empire. I think President Trump thought very deeply. I know Speaker Mike Johnson said after the second assassin was captured, Trump realized how really deep a problem threat this was. And he and Trump went off to a room and prayed for 2 hours. Now, I think you're seeing a man who has been profoundly shaped by realizing that God saved him and that therefore he owes a different quality of duty than he would have thought a year ago. And I've known Trump a long time. This is a more sober, more serious, more considerate person than he was before these assassination attempts.
I think that's exactly right. And he looks as if he has a centeredness that I don't want to say it was lacking in the first term, but it is deepened and strengthened. He feels present, ready, in total command and control of every room that he comes into. There's almost nothing that can surprise you once you've been shot, literally. At that point, what bad news article are they going to write about you? He's faced 700 years in federal prison. They tried to take his business empire away from him. And that word duty has been lost in American political virtue for quite some time. And the media deep down almost knows that not only they've lost, but he kind of won in such a way that no matter how much they complain, they can't possibly stop him at this point. Mr. Speaker, what could go wrong at this point? What are the potential cautionary pitfalls? You've been and seen a lot of presidencies that this administration needs to be cautious of and aware of.
Well, look, I think, first of all, you have to have a certain level of humility. President Kennedy had a sign on his desk that said, "Oh, Lord, your ocean is so big and my boat is so small." And even if you're as big as President Donald Trump, the world is much, much bigger. So you have to be cautious. You have to worry about not starting a nuclear war with Russia. You have to worry about what North Korea is going to do. You have to make sure that the Chinese communists don't think they can cross the Taiwan Straits. You've got to worry about the Iranians who are religious fanatics and try to help the Iranian people who are not religious fanatics. I mean, there are a lot of things out there that make the world complicated. We're undertaking a brand new struggle where we have defined criminal organizations like the cartels as terrorist groups. That involves a whole series of decisions. And Mexico's a big country, and it's a country that has large sections of it being run by criminal gangs. So that's going to be a major concern. The biggest concern I think, for the president, the thing he has to focus on is the economy. It's vital to him to keep the House in 2026, and it's going to be a real fight. If the economy is growing, if there's a sense of a Trump boom, then I think he's got a good chance of keeping the House. If the economy is still floundering, then I think there's a real likelihood we'll lose the House, and you'll end up with a Nancy Pelosi environment of Democrats obstructing, blocking, investigating, and possibly impeaching. So this is the central decision point, and that requires, in my judgment, passing a very, very strong bill, I think by Memorial Day, as Speaker Johnson said, or certainly no later than July the 4th, because it's got to go into effect. Now, the early reports, $500 billion committed for artificial intelligence, the Saudis committing $600 billion. These are great things. But to get the average American on board, they've got to see the taxes change, the regulations change, the economy growing. If that happens, and with people like you, and I have to say, you were extraordinarily helpful and important in the last presidential campaign, and I think you made a significant difference, particularly in reaching out to younger Americans. So with the help of the entire team that elected him president, we have a chance to make sure we not only just keep the House, but we actually increase our margin. There are 13 Democrats in seats that Donald Trump carried. There are another 21 Democrats that are in seats he got within 5%. They're going to vote very strangely, very much against the American people. And we have a real chance to beat them and to substantially increase the majority that Speaker Johnson has to work with.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Mr. Speaker. My inclination has been for two bills, but can you convince our audience otherwise? I'm not against one. I mean, I'm far from a legislative expert. Why do you think one bill would be the best solution?
Well, let me just say, as part of the background, that I've engineered this before. We were the only Congress in 100 years to pass 4 consecutive balanced budgets, pass welfare reform, pass tax cuts, pass Food and Drug Administration reform, invent Medicare Advantage. We did all that with a Democratic president. Why? Because we followed Ronald Reagan's principle, Abraham Lincoln's principle, which is you start with the American people. President Trump, if he will campaign for about 10 weeks and go into the districts I just mentioned, the 34 that are vulnerable Democrats, he will pass a big bill. I don't think you can do that twice in the first 6 months of the year. And I think it's desperately important that be the tax cuts, deregulation, energy, affordability bill. I think you can throw in things for immigration. He's frankly going to do a lot on immigration without a bill. And I think people say, oh, we want a quick early victory. No, I want a decisive victory that shapes the economy for next year to give us a chance to keep the House. Anything less than that is a failure. And I think the Senate is so cumbersome and so difficult to work just structurally that even though John Thune's going to be a very good majority leader and very cooperative with Trump, frankly, he would have a very hard time getting two big bills through the Senate in 6 months. So if I have to choose, I want one really big bill, as Trump describes it, one big, beautiful bill. And I think that's the safest if you want to keep a majority in the House, and it's the safest if you want the Trump presidency to be successful.
Very persuasive, Mr. Speaker. I yield to the experts, and no matter what, we'll be helping. Whatever the team decides, we'll be there to support, and we'll be there to make sure it happens. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much.
Great to be with you.